There are only 242 days to the general election, an election that is one of the most consequential and will face one of the most diverse electorates in the nation's history. There will be 10.2 million voters more than there were in 2012. 7.5 million of those will come from a racial or ethnic minority group. 1 out of every 3 eligible voters this year will be a minority voter, either Latino, African American, Asian, or some other minority group. Nosotros, los latinos y las latinas, actualmente somos entre el grupo más creciente en la nación. We are among the fastest growing group of eligible voters. In just over 4 years, our voting numbers have grown over 17% and is increasing with every election cycle. So let's remember that we can make a difference. Que nosotros decidimos. And let's remember that elections have consequences. And I just want to take a moment to talk about the intersectionalism about our need to vote and what that need ultimately creates. When I say to my brothers and sisters in the Hispanic community about why it is important to vote, I say, think about your life. Think about your family's life. Think about our community's life. Think about the nation. We have seen through the fall of 2002 to the fall of 2012, over the course of a decade, the number of Hispanic students enrolled has increased from 8.6 million to 12.1 million. The number of Hispanic public school students projected to increase from 12.5 million to 15 million in just the next decade, and will be nearly a third of all students by 2024. That means a third of the nation's competitiveness in a global market will be from the Hispanic community. But even though we have made great strides in reducing the Hispanic dropout rate, something that we should applaud, the reality is that we still have higher rates of dropout than any other group, about 14%, compared to 8% of African Americans, 5% of whites, and 4% of Asians. So you cannot have a third of the nation's competitive future losing 14% of that competitive future for the nation and for our community. Who we vote for in terms of educational opportunity, in terms of turning schools that may be failing into schools that are succeeding, in terms of continuing to see the massive movement that we applaud of students going to college from our community, a huge increase. Hispanics are the largest minority group on U.S. college campuses today and growing. But they graduate particularly from our community, and I know this because as someone who grew up poor in a tenement, I understand the power of the federal government in its Pell and Perkins loans and other opportunities to make it possible for me to go to the university and then to law school, but then graduate under a huge mountain of debt, and then struggle through the better part of the beginning of your professional career to try to overcome that debt. We cannot allow that to happen, but who gets elected as President of the United States and serves, by the way, there's also congressional elections. We keep thinking about only the presidency, but the entire House of Representatives is up for election, and a third of the United States Senate. So who we elect is going to determine whether for our community, whether we reduce those dropout rates, whether we create better schools, and whether we will make sure that our students have the educational opportunity they need going to college without graduating under a mountain of debt. We look at income. We make up more than 16% of the U.S. population, but only 2.2% of the nation's wealth. 16% of the population, 2.2% of the nation's wealth. Mexicanos y Puertorriqueños make up nearly 75% of the country's Hispanic population, but they earn significantly and less on average than the typical American household. $51,000 is the median household income in the United States, but it's only $38,000 for Mexican families and $36,000 for Puerto Rican families. Who we elect and thinks about what are the economic policies, what are the tax policies to help us grow our families, to take care of the Latina who is working hard in a profession but also taking care of her children, trying to get them educated, and because of our culture, very likely taking care of an extended member of the family, abuelo or abuela. The challenges they face is enormous within American society today. Who we elect and understands that and has policies that will deal with that will make an enormous difference in those Latinas' lives. We are the fastest rate of small business growth. Latinas happen to be the ones who lead in that regard. But whether or not we have policies that will create access to capital, that will create that expansion opportunity and hire many people, both from our community and from without, depends upon who gets elected. So these are the intersections as to why it's not just about voting, but why voting makes a difference in our lives. Nuestro voto decide en nuestra vida todos los días. En este país, desde el momento que nacimos al momento que morimos, el gobierno tiene una decisión que afecta nuestra vida. No lo pensamos de esa forma, pero sí. Y cuando nosotros no salimos a votar y no decidimos quién es que queremos dirigir nuestro futuro para la presidencia en el Senado y la Cámara de Representantes, le permitimos a otros que deciden por nosotros. Otros que no entienden nuestras realidades, otros que no entienden nuestras dificultades, otros que no entienden nuestras oportunidades de aportar a la nación. Yo en mi vida nunca he querido que otro decide por mí. Y como comunidad tenemos que tener ese mensaje de que todo lo que vamos a hacer en estas elecciones va a decidir en la educación de nuestros hijos, en el bienestar económico de nuestras familias, en el bienestar de salud de nuestras familias, en el progreso de nuestros pequeños negocios, en la inmigración. Let me finish on immigration. There is a clear difference. Elections have consequences. We have candidates that talk about building walls instead of bridges. We have candidates that bring out the worst in average Americans. They appeal to their darker nature versus their better angels. They are not who we are as a country. But we cannot just believe that their extremism is going to fall on its own. We have to get out to vote to ensure that those, and this is not just about our brothers and sisters who are undocumented. This is about all of us, because when I hear that language, I have lived a lifetime in public service where I have been called names and told what I cannot do. This is about all of us. Let us not be confused. Cuando hablan de la forma que están hablando, no es solamente de los inmigrantes que no están indocumentados, están hablando de todos nosotros como una comunidad. Y el respeto no se gana sino por el látigo del pueblo, que es su voto. And so that's why I see the article in the New York Times that talks about the Mexican family who are legal permanent residents of the United States but never felt compelled to go ahead and become a United States citizen. And now they are driven to do so because they understand that this is about all of us. Thank you very much for having me with me.